You read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You took notes. You felt the spark, and yet, your bank account looks the same. You're not alone. Millions read the book and walk away feeling motivated, but nothing actually changes. Why? Because there's a step the book inspires but doesn't deliver. A step that separates the wealthy from the well-read. And without it, all that mindset training turns into shelf help. In this video, we're going to break down exactly why Rich Dad, Poor Dad didn't make you rich, and the crucial step most people miss. And no, it's not work harder, save more, or just start a business. It's deeper than that. So stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll understand how to actually implement the book's lessons, not just believe in them. This is part 1 of a new mini-series we're building on the foundational myths of financial education, starting with the book that launched millions of financial awakenings, but also millions of quiet disappointments. If this is your first time here, welcome to Trip to Wealth. We don't do hype, we decode real wealth-building strategy backed by experience, history, and the unspoken truths behind the success stories. If that sounds like your path forward, consider subscribing. A few years ago, a friend of mine, let's call him Marcus, read Rich Dad, Poor Dad cover to cover, twice. He was fired up, quit his job within 30 days, started a YouTube channel, launched a dropshipping store, followed all the invest in yourself advice. He even wrote assets over liabilities on his bathroom mirror. Fast forward 2 years. He was broke, back living with his parents, in debt, and angry, not just at himself, but at the book. It doesn't work, he told me. It's all theory. But here's the truth. The book works if you understand what it is. It's not a plan, it's a lens. And the step most people miss is turning that lens into a system. That's what this video is about. Let's break it down. Let's start with something uncomfortable. Rich Dad. Poor Dad assumes you'll know what to do after reading it. That's the hidden flaw. It delivers mindset shifts, but it doesn't hand you the map. And for most people, that's where everything breaks down. You see, Kiyosaki's book is brilliant at exposing the trap. Go to school, get a job, trade time for money, retire poor. It teaches you to think in terms of assets, passive income, and entrepreneurial thinking. That alone changes lives. But here's where it goes off the rails for the average reader. It doesn't show you how to build your first asset. Not a real one, not step by step, not in your actual life. And so what happens? You finish the book inspired. You write down your goals. Maybe you even sketch out some business ideas. But then you hit the real world, and you realize something terrifying. There are no instructions. There's no roadmap from mindset to money. So you either guess or you freeze. This is why most people who read Rich Dad, Poor Dad never get rich. Not because they didn't understand the lessons, but because they were never taught how to operationalize them. They miss the step that bridges belief to execution. What is that step? It's structure. Real wealth isn't built just from belief. It's built from systems, constraints, and execution strategy. The mindset is the ignition, but without the machine, the car doesn't move. Rich Dad gives you the key, but it doesn't build the engine. Remember, without a framework, mindset becomes mental clutter. So if you ever felt like the book left you hanging, you weren't crazy. It did. And that missing bridge between clarity and action, that's what we're building in the next lesson. Let's be honest, the most dangerous illusion that came out of Rich Dad. Poor Dad wasn't the advice itself, but what people did with it. Or rather, what they didn't do. Because belief, no matter how powerful, won't make you wealthy. The missing step is deceptively simple. Turning philosophy into behavior, and behavior into systems. Most people close the book feeling like they've unlocked a secret. They understand passive income now. They finally see assets and liabilities for what they really are. They even talk differently, But their life? It doesn't change. Their routines don't shift. Their bank accounts don't grow. Their time is still consumed by work that trades hours for dollars. That's the silent failure. Mindset is not motion. It's not traction. It's not compounding. It's the match, not the fire. What you need is a system, a concrete, repeatable structure that converts belief into cash flow. That could look like setting up an automated savings pipeline into a brokerage account, not just once, but every paycheck, no matter what. It might mean carving out 10 hours a week, consistently, to build a business or income stream that doesn't depend on your presence. Or it could mean mapping out a skill-building loop that compounds over months and years until you become irreplaceable in your field. Those aren't ideas, they're operating systems. And here's the real truth. Mindset without those structures, it just becomes noise. A motivational echo chamber. If this resonates, comment more below, and we'll build a full implementation framework that brings Rich Dad, Poor Dad into your real life, not just your bookshelf. Because this isn't about being inspired anymore. It's about becoming equipped. And the wealthy don't just think differently. They build differently. Mindset is only the first domino. Systems are the rest of the chain. Let's move on to the next key shift. And this one's a little uncomfortable. Because chances are, if you walked away from Rich Dad, Poor Dad thinking, I need to buy more assets, you may have misunderstood the assignment. Most people hear the word asset and immediately think house, stocks, maybe even crypto or a vending machine business. And sure, those can all be assets, in the technical sense. But what Kiyosaki didn't fully spell out is that the wealthy don't just collect assets. They engineer them, they control them, and most importantly, they stack them inside systems that create cash flow on command. The mistake people make is chasing ownership without leverage, buying a property without a scalable plan, grabbing a few dividend stocks with no capital to make the return meaningful, launching a side hustle that eats time but never compounds. That's not asset building, that's asset cosplay. Because here's the truth, an asset that doesn't move the needle isn't a solution. It's a distraction. It gives the illusion of progress while quietly keeping you stuck. The wealthy avoid this trap by asking one simple question. Does this asset give me control, cash flow, and compounding potential, or just another thing to babysit? If it doesn't scale, if it doesn't multiply, if it doesn't function inside a system, it's not helping you escape the rat race. It's just dressed up liability. Remember, an unmanaged asset is just an expensive distraction. So if you've been wondering why your assets aren't creating freedom, this is why. You don't need more things in your portfolio. You need a structure that turns ownership into leverage. Now let's talk about the next critical shift. And this one hits harder than most. Because if you've read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, nodded along with every lesson, and still feel stuck in the same routine, you're not broken. You're just in the middle of the trap the book warned you about, without a real way out. Kiyosaki's concept of the rat race is simple. Trading your time for money, paying bills, rinse, repeat. It's a treadmill that rewards stability, but punishes freedom. The book does a phenomenal job of naming that prison, but it doesn't teach you how to break out. That's why so many people walk away from it feeling empowered, yet trapped. Because here's the truth. Just understanding the problem doesn't give you the tools to solve it. If all you've done since reading the book is think differently, but your time, income, and energy still flow the same way, then you're still on the same wheel, just more aware of it. And that kind of awareness without escape, it's a special kind of pain. People try to break free by jumping into something random, a drop-shipping store, a rental unit, maybe crypto. But without structure, it's chaos. Without leverage, it's just a second job in disguise. You're still trading hours, still running, still tired. The wealthy don't escape by running faster. They exit the track entirely. They build systems that compound without their presence. They buy time by installing machines that outlive their labor. That's the real escape, not just income, but autonomy. Escaping the rat race isn't about quitting your job. It's about quitting dependency. So if your days still feel the same, even after reading the book, you're not failing. You're just overdue for the next layer. Let's move to the next breakthrough. And this one's the quiet driver behind almost every wealth story that actually worked. Ownership. Real, strategic, intentional ownership. And no, we're not just talking about owning a rental property or a few shares of Apple stock. We're talking about owning systems, owning outcomes, owning leverage. This is what Rich Dad, Poor Dad hints at, but never quite lays bare. It tells you to build assets, to stop working for money, to create freedom. But what most readers don't realize is that freedom doesn't come from activity. It comes from control. And the only way to gain control is through ownership. The wealthy don't just participate in markets, they shape them. They don't just earn from companies, they build or buy them. They don't just buy assets, they own the systems that distribute value. Here's where most people go wrong. They try to shortcut ownership. They jump into crypto instead of learning business. They buy stocks instead of building equity. They outsource too soon. Or worse, they never start because it all feels too big. But ownership isn't about owning everything. It's about owning the right thing, the skill, system, or vehicle that you can control, grow, and leverage over time. For some, that's a product. For others, it's an audience. For the truly strategic, it's a portfolio of automated income machines that they tweak, optimize, and stack. Remember this: the middle class rents security, the wealthy own freedom. If you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad and still feel like something's missing, this is likely it. You learned about assets, but no one showed you how to build or buy the kind you can control. Let's move on to the next critical insight, and it might be the most sobering one of all. Because if you've been waiting for compounding to kick in, if you've told yourself it's just a matter of time, there's something you need to hear. Time doesn't build wealth, systems do. Time just amplifies whatever you've already built. This is the trap so many people fall into after reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. They learn about long-term thinking. They start believing in compounding. And then they wait. They trick themselves into thinking that time is doing the work, that patience alone will lead to prosperity. But here's the truth: if you're compounding nothing, time just multiplies zero. The wealthy know this instinctively. That's why they spend the early years not just investing, but building engines. They create infrastructure, income loops, skill stacks, leveraged assets, so that when time does pass, there's something to grow. Most people confuse delay with strategy. They think waiting to invest, waiting to act, waiting until they know more is smart. But what they're really doing is deferring action and losing years to inertia. You want to know what the wealthy do differently? They compound clarity, they compound execution, they compound infrastructure. They get started early, not because they expect magic, but because they know momentum is a muscle. Time is only your ally if you've already built the machine. Otherwise, it just magnifies your inaction. So if you've been sitting on the sidelines thinking compounding will take care of you, think again. Time is leverage, yes, but only when tied to the right system. Otherwise, it's just sand slipping through your fingers. Let's wrap this up with the final shift, the one belief that actually turns theory into transformation. Let's close with what this has all been building toward, the uncomfortable truth behind the title of this video. Why Rich Dad, Poor Dad didn't make you rich, and what to do about it. It's not because the book failed you, it's because the world convinced you that inspiration was enough. That mindset was transformation, that knowing the why would magically generate the how. But belief without structure fades, clarity without action dissolves. Mindset without mechanics dies in your notebook. Rich Dad. Poor Dad wasn't meant to give you the answers. It was meant to wake you up. But what most people miss, what keeps them stuck in cycles of consumption and frustration, is this: ideas need engines. Philosophy needs process. Dreams need infrastructure. That's the part the book doesn't hand you. And frankly, it's not supposed to. It was the ignition switch, not the blueprint. The real reason you're not wealthy yet has nothing to do with your intelligence or discipline. It has everything to do with implementation. You don't need another book, you need a build. A build that includes repeatable systems, feedback loops, income scaffolds, a calendar that reflects strategy, not just hope. Remember, motivation dies fast, systems survive storms. If you've made it this far, you already know the truth. Mindset is the beginning, but structure is the multiplier. That's the step most people miss. And that's the step you're going to take now, because you see the gap. You've named it. So the question becomes, will you build what the book didn't give you? Because if you do, that's when Rich Dad, Poor Dad finally makes you rich, not in theory, but in life. Before you go, if this hits home, I recommend watching my next video. Drop a comment with the word more, because we're building a full companion series that maps these insights into real-world strategy. Subscribe to Trip to Wealth so you don't miss that. And if you want a deeper system built on these truths, check out the links below.